How he ended his career, that's what people still ask about Duncan Ferguson. But Big Dunc wasn't just another footballer who lost his way. He was the only player in British history to go to prison for what he did during a match. One headbutt changed everything. How did a towering striker with a record transfer fee end up behind bars, banned from his country, and filled with lifelong regret? Duncan Ferguson was a giant on the pitch. Standing tall as a striker, Big Dunc made his mark with power and aggression. In 1993, Rangers paid a British record fee of £4 million to sign him. That transfer showed just how much they valued his ability to score goals and intimidate defenders. But Ferguson's style came with a price. He picked up 9 red cards during his career, including 8 in the Premier League alone. That was a joint record that nobody wanted to share. His aggressive play made him feared by opponents, but it also put him on a dangerous path. What most people didn't know was that Ferguson's problems went far beyond football. By 1994, he already had 3 assault convictions. 3 separate times he had used violence off the pitch. The courts had tried fines and probation, but nothing seemed to work. Ferguson kept getting into fights, and the law kept catching up with him. The pattern was clear. First came a taxi rank fight where he headbutted a policeman. That cost him £100 and another £25 for breach of peace. Then another taxi incident where he punched and kicked a supporter who was on crutches. £200 that time. Finally, a bar fight with a fisherman in Anstruther that earned him a year's probation. Each time, the punishments got worse. The courts were losing patience with Duncan Ferguson. They had tried the gentle approach, but he wasn't learning. Something bigger was coming, and it would happen on the football pitch itself. April 16th, 1994. Rangers against Raith Rovers at Ibrox. This should have been just another Scottish Premier Division match. Instead, it became the day that changed football history forever. During the game, Ferguson lost his temper with Raith Rovers defender John McStay. In a moment of pure rage, he headbutted McStay in the southwest corner of the pitch. McStay hit the ground with a gashed lip and a wound inside his mouth. Blood was visible, but he managed to keep playing. Here's the strange part. Referee Kenny Clark completely missed the headbutt. He only saw what he called a minor scuffle on the touchline. Clark gave Raith Rovers a free kick and had a word with both players. That was it. Ferguson even went on to score his first goal for Rangers in the second half, but this time was different. The incident was caught on video. Those cameras that were meant to capture great goals and saves had recorded something much darker. The video evidence would prove crucial in what happened next. The Scottish Football Association moved first. On May 13, 1994, they banned Ferguson for 12 matches. This was their punishment for the headbutt, dealt with through football's own disciplinary system. Ferguson thought that was the end of it. He was wrong. The video footage had also caught the attention of the police. They studied the evidence and decided this wasn't just a football matter. This was assault, pure and simple. Ferguson was charged by the Procurator Fiscal in Glasgow with assault committed during a professional football match. The legal process took over a year. Finally, in October 1995, Duncan Ferguson stood in court facing assault charges. The prosecution had the video evidence. They had Ferguson's history of violence. They had everything they needed. Ferguson was found guilty. On October 11th, 1995, he was sentenced to 3 months in prison. This was his 4th assault conviction, but the first time he would go to jail. The judge made it clear why the sentence was so harsh. The court said the assault had been committed in public before thousands of spectators. They needed to send a message to deter others from similar acts of criminal violence. The judge stated that while courts didn't want to interfere with contact sports, when actions went well beyond normal physical contact, the law had to step in. Ferguson's previous convictions sealed his fate. The court specifically mentioned his recent criminal history when denying his appeal. This wasn't just about one headbutt. This was about a pattern of violent behaviour that had to be stopped. Ferguson became the first and only professional player in Britain to be jailed for an on-field offence. The precedent was set. Football players were not above the law, no matter how famous or valuable they were. HMP Barlinnie in Glasgow was one of Scotland's toughest prisons. Ferguson served 44 days of his 3-month sentence, but those weeks would haunt him forever. Walking into D Hall, Ferguson faced what he described as chilling silence and stares from other inmates. It felt like a coliseum where all eyes were on him. Despite trying to put on a fearless facade, he later admitted the experience was terrifying. The noise, the violence, the awful smells of the place overwhelmed him. Being a famous footballer made him a big target inside. Other prisoners wanted to make their reputation by taking down Big Dunc. The sectarian divide made things even worse. Ferguson had played for Rangers, a club with Protestant associations. Half the prison supported Celtic, the Catholic club. As Ferguson put it, sectarianism flowed through Barlinnie like sewage through a broken pipe. This wasn't how he had been raised, but it put his life in danger. Ferguson feared for his life during one particular incident. He realised he could have hit back at people who threatened him, but that would have meant another 3 months inside. He might have kept rolling that sentence on, so he forced himself to show extreme self-control. Even years later, those 44 days remained painfully vivid in his memory. The prison experience had marked him permanently, far beyond any football ban or fine ever could. The prison sentence meant Ferguson missed a significant part of the 1995-96 season. Luckily for him, Everton had already signed him on loan in October 1994 and later made the move permanent. They stood by him through his legal troubles. Ferguson helped Everton avoid relegation and win the 1994-95 FA Cup. After his release, he continued to have a respectable career, making over 200 Premier League appearances for the club. But the damage to his international career was permanent. Ferguson felt betrayed by the Scottish Football Association. He believed they had punished him twice for the same offence, first with the 12-match ban, then by not supporting him during his legal troubles. In his mind, this was double jeopardy. After 1997, Ferguson refused to play for Scotland ever again. This was his protest against what he saw as unfair treatment. He walked away from international football in his prime, robbing himself and his country of years of potential success. The decision would become the biggest regret of his career. In February 2023, Ferguson admitted that not playing more for Scotland haunted him. By then, it was far too late to change anything. Years later, Ferguson began to open up about his troubled past. His autobiography, Big Dunc, the upfront autobiography, gave a searingly honest account of his life, including painful reflections on his time in Barlinnie. Ferguson consistently downplayed the severity of the headbutt, calling it nothing and just a graze. This stood in stark contrast to the court's severe judgment. He felt he should not have been made an example of, and blamed the press for playing a big part in his conviction. But Ferguson also began to acknowledge his own problems. He admitted that his relationship with alcohol had undermined his playing career. He regularly drank heavily in Mallorca after retirement, before deciding to quit 15 years ago. The cessation of drinking led directly to less confrontation off the field. Ferguson recognised the connection between alcohol and his violent tendencies. He also began to wince at some of the hardman stuff from his past, like shunning David Beckham. Ferguson now insists he was not the big hard case everyone made him out to be. He reflects that he was young, naive, and pig-headed. He expresses regret for not reaching his full potential as a football player. The Duncan Ferguson story transcended sport and law to become part of popular culture. Finnish composer Osmo Tapio Raihala was so inspired by Ferguson's tale that he wrote a symphonic poem called Barlinnie 9 as a musical portrait of the footballer. This artistic interpretation showed how Ferguson's story had embedded itself in broader cultural narratives about consequences, personal growth, and the complexities of public life. His experience resonated with themes of confinement, consequence, and public scrutiny. The legal precedent Ferguson's case established continues to influence sports governance today. His conviction solidified the principle that professional athletes are not immune from criminal prosecution for actions that exceed accepted sporting norms. Courts now have clear guidance that when sporting actions go well beyond normal physical contact, criminal law applies. This has led to increased scrutiny of on-field violence and potentially more severe consequences for extreme behaviour. Duncan Ferguson's journey from promising striker to prison inmate to reformed man tells a complex story of consequence and redemption. His headbutt on John McStay lasted seconds but changed his life forever. The 3 months in prison, reduced to 44 days served, taught Ferguson lessons that years of fines and probations could not. He learned that fame and talent offered no protection from the law. He discovered that violence always has a price face, even when it happens during a football match. Ferguson's refusal to play for Scotland cost him and his country dearly. His later regret shows how pride and anger can rob us of opportunities that never return. But his eventual recognition of his problems and his decision to change also show that redemption is possible. The man who once struck fear into defenders and fellow prisoners alike now speaks with humility about his past. He admits his mistakes, acknowledges his wasted potential, and serves as a warning to others who might follow the same destructive path. Duncan Ferguson remains the only British footballer to go to prison for an on-field offence. That unique and unwanted record ensures his story will never be forgotten. It stands as proof that in the end, we all answer for our actions, no matter where we commit them or how famous we are.